Well, one of the most memorable months in UFC history is officially over, and it ends with possibly the last fight ever for the greatest of all time. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani following the UFC 183 post-fight press conference here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm being joined by Mark Ramundi and, of course, our own Dave Meltzer as well. And Anderson Silva just defeated Nick Diaz via unanimous decision. Two judges had it 50-45, one 49-46. And Mark, I'll start with you. Was that satisfying? Was that the fight that you expected? You feel like you walked away with, all right, that was a solid fight. I got what I wanted out of Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz.
I think so. It was a really interesting fight. It was kind of strange. The first round was more spectacle than anything else, with Nick Diaz laying on the floor, and I think did he twerk? Did he twerk at Anderson Silva in the first round?
I'm not sure about twerk. He did a lot of things. Twerk, not one of them.
But he did turn his back to Anderson Silva at one point, and it was just a very bizarre first round. Second round was a little bit better as far as actual fighting and punches being thrown and stuff like that. The rest of the fight was kind of like, not a whole lot happened. It wasn't very eventful. And, Diaz got his shots in. Silva got his shots in. Didn't look like the Silva of old. Diaz looked not too bad at middleweight. I don't think a lot of questions were answered in this fight. It wasn't Anderson Silva steamrolling Nick Diaz. It wasn't Nick Diaz, knocking out Anderson Silva. I think it's a good fight for both of them. I think both of them can go places from here if they choose to do so. Maybe not the best fight for the UFC in this case. It wasn't an exciting, finish, but it was what it was. It was a spectacle. It was interesting for sure.
So, Dave, Nick Diaz maintains that he won that fight.
Well,
do you agree?
No. I had all 5 rounds for Anderson. But the thing is, they weren't blow-away rounds. I mean, it wasn't like, it's like as a 50-45, it was much closer than a usual 50-45. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have any doubt in my mind that, Anderson won. It seemed like he was landing more. He was quicker. Nick did move forward some, but I thought that Anderson controlled most of the fight as far as he was the guy kind of running the show.
I thought the first round was one of the most fun rounds I've ever seen. It was almost like watching a real-life video game. Two guys who you never thought would actually fight. And, Diaz's theatrics and the back and forth. I thought it was a lot of fun. Then the pace slowed down, and, of course, Anderson ran away with it. Mark just said we didn't learn anything about either guy. Do you agree with that?
I can't say that, but what I think, I didn't know what we were going to get with Anderson because he's been, he was out for a year. He had a broken leg. He's 39 years old, almost 40. So there were all kinds of questions. I think he made a remarkable comeback. I mean, but is that enough to be the old Anderson? I don't know that we ever get the old Anderson back. I mean, we saw flashes of it, moments here and there. But I mean, the age alone and the broken leg, those are two major things. And I think he had some confidence in the leg. I didn't see the sense of him being afraid to do stuff, but he was gun shy. So I mean that's not a contradiction, but
sure.
But you know what I mean. It was like he was there. It felt like he proved that he could come back from the injury, and that was a story. And I almost got the sense that now that he proved that, he kind of said that to you.
Yeah.
I mean, he kind of like erased.
Yeah.
Going out on that note, you don't really want to end your career. I thought that was the end of his career a year ago. And what a sad end to the career. So now he ends on a nice note, if that is the end of his career.
Mark, Dave says the old Anderson, and I think that's kind of fitting. He's about to turn 40 in April. He did look older, in my opinion. And I couldn't help but think, if Chris Weidman comes back, and hopefully he will, this Chris Weidman would kind of dominate this Anderson Silva. I don't want to see Anderson fight the beasts at the top of the 185-pound division. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. I think we were saying this on the preview show. I think tonight's fights kind of, further underscore that. I don't think Anderson Silva, like Dave said, is the Anderson Silva of old. And he doesn't really need to be the Anderson Silva of old. I think he's good enough to still win fights in the UFC, just not against the elite guys in the middleweight division, not against Chris Weidman. I talked to Ray Longo this week, and his quotes were kind of telling, I don't want to see this fight. It doesn't make sense for the UFC to put Silva back in there. He's going to be probably 40 years old by the next time he fights, you'd imagine. He doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't need to be on that title path. Leave that for the younger, hungrier guys. Give Anderson Silva fun fights. There are so many interesting fights out there for Anderson Silva still in the UFC.
Do you care to see him fight again?
I don't mind either way. It's up to him. It's his call. It's like he said, he's gonna go back and talk to his family. Part of me felt when he was in the cage today after the fight was over and he was on his knees and he was crying. It felt like that was it. It felt like he needed to prove to himself that he can come back and do it again after the broken leg. He needed to come back and get in there and win a fight and go out on a good note. So it felt to me like when he was having that emotional, moment at the end of the fight that it was probably going to be it.
Dave, if you ask me, I just want to ask you this. If you ask me, the only fight that I care to see Anderson Silva in is the GSP fight. They both don't have titles attached, and of course, if GSP is healthy mentally and physically, that is a gigantic fight for the UFC. The time is now to make that fight, in my opinion. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, for both guys, if George wants to fight, to me that's the fight, especially right now.
Yeah.
And I don't want to close the book on Anderson. If Anderson comes back, let's maybe it's first fight, he's not quite all the way there. If he somehow in the next fight looks phenomenal, maybe. I mean, I'm not expecting it. I'm not thinking right now that I can't wait for him to fight Chris Weidman. But I don't want to close the door if somehow or other, it's the first fight back after a broken leg, after a long layoff.
Sure.
But given that he'll be 40, I'm probably hoping against hope.
Yeah. On the flip side, you have Nick Diaz, who said something very interesting in the post-fight press conference. He said, "I'm tired of being a loser." And this is his third loss in a row. All close fights, I should retract that. Not close fights as far as the
real fights.
But he wasn't knocked out, he wasn't submitted, and he's in these fights. You still think he wants to fight, though, because he keeps talking about not enjoying this, and his demeanor this week was a little strange, in my opinion. It was the old Nick in there on Saturday night in the cage, the trash talk, but I feel weird about seeing him fight because he keeps saying he doesn't want to fight, and he doesn't enjoy this whole process. So how do you feel about it?
But he's said that for a while.
I feel like he says it more now.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, because 5 years ago he didn't say it, and then it started coming more and more in the last 2 or 3 years. I think that there's some disappointment because he always comes up on the short end of decisions, or he has been in the last couple of fights. This was a fight that most people didn't expect him to win. The George fight was a fight most people didn't expect him to win. So you look, he was in there with really tough guys, and the Condit fight was a close fight, but that was also years ago. I can't think what Nick Diaz wants to do, and I don't know that he knows yet. I mean, in 6 months, it'll probably be a lot more clearer to him, or 3 months, than it is right now. He can compete with the top welterweights. Could he win the championship? I don't know. I mean, he's beaten Robbie. He's got to win over Robbie Lawler. It was years and years ago,
Sure.
But I mean, I don't want to see him go against Robbie Lawler right now. I think that's hopping the line because it is sort of a marketable fight. I really would hope that he at least has to win a couple of fights, and if he can, fine. And if not, if he walks away, he's young enough. He's got a couple good years left in him, I think.
Mark, look into your crystal ball. Was that the last time we ever saw Nick Diaz fight?
I don't actually own a crystal ball, but
The one right here.
I'll still answer your question, though. No, it's not the last time that we saw him. Like Dave said, he's been kind of saying the I don't like fighting thing for a long time. But I think plain and simple that Nick Diaz is a fighter. I mean, he's just a fighter. That's who he is. That's what it's not just a job. Even though he was kind of saying, it's a job. It's not just a job to him. This is really who he is. This is what he does. And I think he'll come back and he'll fight again. And to me, I don't think his stock dropped at all tonight. I think his stock actually raised because people were saying Anderson Silva was going to knock him out, that it was going to be a quick, easy victory. Anderson Silva was dominant in terms of the scorecards, but Diaz had his moments in that fight. It wasn't a complete wipeout. It wasn't a blowout. I think Nick Diaz looked fine tonight. I think his striking looked solid. He threw more kicks than he usually does. He's been training with Joe Schilling and Artem Levin and guys like that. I think he's going to fight again. I think he's going to be fine. Like Dave said, I don't want to see him, against Robbie Lawler right now. But there are plenty of guys in the welterweight division that Nick Diaz can not only compete with, but can beat also.
Dave, let's touch on a few more things, and then we'll say goodbye. Kelvin Gastelum loses to Tyron Woodley, but what a week it was for him. He misses weight badly, 9 pounds over, has to go to the hospital. Some questions whether or not he would actually fight. Woodley, got a bit of that peer pressure to take the fight and did it. And hey, kudos to that guy for saying, I don't want his 30%. A really classy move by Tyron Woodley. And Dana White says that Gastelum is done at 170. He also said John Lineker, who beat Ian McCall, is done at 125 because he missed weight. Again, are you okay with those calls? The UFC finally telling those guys you have to move up?
Lineker, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Because this is the fourth time?
Yes, I believe.
It's too many, and you can't. What are you going to do? Put him in a title fight, and then he's going to miss weight at the title?
Can't trust him.
Yeah, exactly. And as far as Gastelum, I mean, is it his second time he's missed or third?
Officially, but he's had issues.
Yeah.
He
So
had to go back.
right. So, I mean, here's the thing. Maybe give him another chance. Not now. Maybe he has to go up to 185, fight a couple times. Maybe he can try at some other point. We'll see how effective he is at 185. He should be healthier at 185. Obviously, this thing wasn't healthy for him. And it was touch and go if he should have fought. There's a real question if he should have fought tonight. He did better than I expected in the fight, all things considered. Because I was afraid in the first round there were a couple times where I just thought he was about to get blown out, and he went 3 rounds and he won the 3rd round too. So he had a nice fight, but I was really scared when one judge gave the fight to Kelvin Gastelum, because it's like we've had some bad decisions, but that would have been a real bad one, because I thought he just lost those first 2 rounds. I mean, completely solid without any even debate.
And let me ask the New Yorker about the New Yorker, Iaquinta, who showed some fire in the post-fight press conference, saying, what I got to do to get a bonus around here? And that was a breakout performance. Finishing Joe Lozon on the feet. I thought the fight went a little too long, should have been stopped earlier, but tremendous stuff. And both Ray Longo, his coach, and Iaquinta called it. They said that they would annihilate him standing, and he did that after making some adjustments in the first round. Who's he ready for now? We had this news that Benson Henderson is not going to be fighting Jorge Masvidal. He's fighting at 170 against Brandon Thatch February 14th. Is it Jorge Masvidal? Is it that kind of fighter, or should he get a bigger fight than that?
No, that's the fight. Actually, you stole it. That was my answer. I was gonna say Masvidal. Yeah, it makes sense now. Iaquinta is right on the cusp of that top 15. Masvidal is in the lower portion of that top 15. That makes so much sense. Although you could probably put him also on the newer card because he's a Long Island guy. He's a local guy. There are a lot of good lightweights. There are plenty of fights upcoming for Iaquinta. He looked great tonight. I was talking to Longo this week, and he told me that he thinks that Iaquinta could be a pro boxer. He thinks that he's good enough right now. He's evolved that much with his striking that he can be a pro boxer. He spars with guys like Chris Algieri, and he really wasn't. He wasn't an amazing striker early in his career. He's really evolved. And Ross Pearson, he beat. Pearson's a great Muay Thai fighter, and now he's beaten Joe Lozon, who's more of a grappler, but he completely dominated him on the feet. As the fight went on, he made some adjustments. I think that he has a pretty high ceiling, and these guys, Sara Longo, they're doing something over there. They've got some good things going on in Long Island.
A really fun card, some great performances. You had Talis Leitich, who, in my opinion, is the owner of the greatest walkout in UFC history, walkout song, I should say. Having a huge night, a great comeback win for him, getting a lot of money as a result in bonus money. And you had Thiago Alves with a great comeback win. Also, Miesha Tate with a great comeback win. So a lot to digest here at UFC 183. We hope you enjoyed our coverage all night long. But before I go, I got to ask these guys, because at the top I said this, in my opinion, one of the most memorable months in UFC history. So let's put a bow on it. What's your favorite memory of January 2015? A lot of bad news has happened, fight cancellations, but hey, all main events, all 4 stay together. We started here in Las Vegas, DC Jones. We then went to Boston for Conor McGregor and Dennis Seaver, of course, Sweden last week, and now we finish off here back in Las Vegas. What stood out? What was the highlight for you?
And it still had to be Jones and Cormier just because of the magnitude of the fight. For me, seeing Sweden on television was really impressive. Conor McGregor in Boston was really impressive because that was like a superstar making performance in front of a big TV audience. But I just thought, I think, the anticipation of DC Cormier was right up there with the most anticipated fights in my mind in years. So I think that excitement, the excitement of the day of that fight was really, really high. So that would be it. But as far as the card, tonight's card was really strong. Those matches that you mentioned, it was a hell of a card tonight.
Your pick?
Well, Jones Cormier is hard to pick against, like Dave said, but McGregor, they brought McGregor back out for the Q&A yesterday and tore the house down again. There were dozens of Irish fans here, for this fight, and McGregor's not even fighting, and they were there to ask, McGregor questions.
They flew from Ireland just to attend the Q&A. That's how passionate they are.
Maybe not quite that.
Maybe, you don't know.
There was a pretty good fight tonight also.
That's true.
It just kind of the fact that there are so many more Irish fans now. McGregor has kind of ignited that fan base, and he's become a star in the United States as well. And this month, what he did against Seaver, a few weeks ago in Boston, has now set up the International Fight Week, main event. Him against Jose Aldo for the featherweight title. It's the biggest fight in featherweight, history. it's their biggest week of the year, and Conor McGregor is headlining it, which says a whole lot. So as far as this month goes, a star was already on the rise, and I think he's really become. The ratings were great. Dave knows a lot about ratings. The ratings were fantastic on that card. McGregor's one of their next big guys. He's a homegrown guy. I think that's a pretty cool part of the month.
Yeah. And let's not forget about Rumble Johnson as well.
Another thing about that also is I think he put that whole division on the map.
Yep,
I mean, because like people, whoever talked about Lamas, and now people are talking about Lamas. If he fights Mendez, Frankie Edgar, there's the sympathy about Frankie Edgar not getting the shot. So if whoever wins, you've got Frankie Edgar back in the spotlight. I think that he's been great for that division.
All right, that does it for us. Goodbye, January 2015. Again, a great month for the UFC. Thank you so much for sticking with us all month long. It's been a lot of fun going to Las Vegas twice, Sweden, of course, Boston. And, of course, the next big UFC event is February 28th. It will not be featuring Chris Weidman versus Vitor Belfort, but we do have Ronda Rousey versus Kat Zingano, and UFC President Dana White saying at the press conference they are trying to keep Vitor Belfort on the card. We will find out if that remains true. That does it for us here in Las Vegas. That is Mark. That is Dave. I am Ariel. We are back on Monday for the MMA Hour. Thanks again for watching our coverage, for checking out the site all week long. We appreciate it very much. Have a great night, and we'll see you on Monday for the MMA Hour.